I'm Becky Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Women in Media, and we want to welcome you today to our next session in the Gracie interview series of Virtual Gathering. This is a series that we created this year, which is a continuation of an ongoing series that we have had, and the goal is just to have great conversations with interesting people that you may want to have a cup of coffee with and just learn more about them. And so we're really fortunate today to have Marcia Cruz with us, and really fortunate that Abby Greensfelder, who is a member of the AWM Board of Directors and is also the CEO and founder of Every Woman Studios, is going to be interviewing her as a producer and some brilliant women in media. With that, I'll toss it to you and we'll get started.
Great, thank you, Becky. And I love this format because it's sort of casual and a conversation, and we had the fun experience of doing a little pre-conversation, and I feel like we had too much to talk about. So we'll try and, I'm gonna try and move us through some different themes and ideas. But first, just to set the stage, a little bit about you so everybody knows. I think your bio's been published, but I know that you are VP of Content Acquisition for Vrio Corp, which is an AT&T sort of branded subsidiary in the LATAM. And so you work across all the LATAM sort of markets and are acquiring content and putting those on all of the Vrio sort of owned channels, which sounds like a huge job. I was also interested to know, so you're in New York, right?
Yes, I am.
And that you spent some time growing up in the States, but as a woman in the business of acquiring content and doing deals in Latin America, it sounds like you are what we'd say a bit of a unicorn. Where and it's great to it's been great to talk to you and hear, and I think we'll talk a little bit today about what it's like to be a woman in that market and that piece of the industry where unfortunately there aren't a lot of women executives, and I think it's particularly interesting, I think, at this moment as we think about the industry is going through so much transformation, but with sort of an AWM hat on, you know, we're about content, buying about women and sort of shining a light on women in their careers. So I think it's particularly interesting for our audience to get a little bit into like sort of your background and your experiences as a woman in this industry. But just as a primer, we had a couple questions come in, which I'll come to in a minute. But before we get to that, I'd love to hear sort of just from your point of view, what got you into this business and doing what you're doing now, just so you give us a little bit about your story.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank for the invite. It's an honor to be here and an opportunity to speak about my experience to this great group of women who are watching us today. I am from Brazil. Originally, I lived here in the US when I was a teenager. My dad used to work for a Dow company, and we lived here for 4 years, which, you know, it's a conversation for another day of rosés, because it's been a great you know, that change in our family. I am a lawyer. I went to law school in Brazil after I finished high school here in the States. I started my career as an entertainment lawyer. So I worked for an entertainment law firm. And for 6 years, I worked strictly as a lawyer, doing every type of deal you can imagine and content, ranging from distribution, television, production, co-productions, and this law firm. It was a small firm, but very specialized in content. It used to render services for the big studios here in the US. So it was a very good lesson. It was a very good first step into my career, and I think I was very fortunate that while I was still in university, I found something within the law career that I really thought was interesting. So if I had to say, there has been luck in my career, I would say it was that first step. Everything else has been a lot of hard work, but that first entry, that first look into entertainment was very lucky for me to do very early into my career. And then I decided that this is what I wanted to do. This was the industry that I wanted to work for. And then after, being a lawyer for 6 years and just doing all sorts of deals in the entertainment industry, I had a hunger for more, to understand how these deals worked, why, the license fees worked as they were, why were the formulas the way they were. And so I decided that I wanted to give it a try and go into the business side of entertainment. So I went back to school. I went to do an MBA. I was probably in my early 30s by then. Went back to school while still working during the day, and got my MBA, and that opened a new avenue for me, a path for me to go into the business world of entertainment. And I was with a company before I came to AT&T for a distributor of movies in Brazil. So that was the best job in the world. I traveled the world, watched movies, got to license them for Brazil, for the Brazilian audience, which was also an important lesson for me in building my career path, because you got a feel for the marketing, for the taste of the audience.
I was going to say, what was the biggest movie you acquired in that phase?
Yeah, there is a movie that I like very much that I acquired. It was a very small movie. It's called Adam's Apples. It's I think it's a Danish movie. And I saw it in Toronto, in the Toronto Film Festival, early into my my business career, and I just loved it because it made me laugh and make me cry, and it touched me in so many ways. And I said, I think this would be a great movie, although Danish, it's very different from the Latin culture, but I thought it was just so universal that it would be incredible. And it ended up that the movie was directed by someone who had won an Oscar for short films before, so it ended up being a huge success in Brazil for a small budget movie. So that was very inspiring and a good overall run. And I do think that everything you do in your life and in your career, it is a step towards what you were supposed to do or what you were supposed to do. So everything I did, law and then doing distribution of movies, brought me here, and they're still an important part of the work I do today. I mean, all these acquisition deals involve a lot of contract analysis and negotiation tactics, and whether or not I sense or I see that certain contents will perform good for our audience or not. And so everything brought me to this point, and it's been incredible.
I love that. We had, when you talk about sort of the universal quality of content that sort of translates over borders, like this movie that you acquired, which sounds like it was instinctual, but it ended up working out business-wise, financially. I'm interested in your experience with the market. And as we talked a little bit prior, one of the things that's so popular in the Latin American market is sports in terms of content. We were talking about soccer, football, and we also talked about, as a producer, my own personal experience of being in Brazil when I traveled there and turning on the TV and seeing the show I created in the States, Say Yes to the Dress, which is broadcast as a version in Brazil. called, I'm going to butcher it in Portuguese. You say it because I'm not going to try. It's like vestido real or
O vestido ideal.
ideal. Okay. So
Yeah, the ideal dress.
The ideal dress. So, and I had thought that there was more of that content that was specifically targeted towards the female audience. And I'd love to hear you talk about, is that is the case, or what opportunities you see in the market as someone who's acquiring content into LATAM, and where the female consumer is and how much the female consumer is being served in the market, in the Latin American and market as a whole.
Okay.